and sharing my screen so you will see the presentation for today and all the code. And let me move all your faces over here. Okay, thank you so much for being here. The first thing that I want to do today is telling you what we will learn in this second session. I will give you a little of review of the pros and cons of using Next.Js. It's not a perfect framework. I've been reading a blog of a guy that talks a lot about Next.Js, and basically the idea is that if somebody creates at some point a perfect framework, nobody will use anything different. And you see a lot of people opting out of using Next.js because it's not perfect. So I want to talk about that. Although I am completely a believer now that you should use Next.js if you are using React for your projects. I will explain you a little more of the best practice of using when you are using client components and why it's important that you check now your UI and the decisions that you are taking with that, because Next.js allow you to do pretty much anything that you wanted. So now it's a little, the responsibility is in your field. It's up to you to check that you do the things the right way. And then we will jump into the code part. We will fix the form. We will fix the router, a router that is broken there. And I will show you how to bring data in the server. And we will talk a little more about that, the magic that Next.js allow you to do now. And then during everything this, I will explain you a little more about Tailwind and how you can work with CSS models here in Next.js, because this is very straightforward too. And then we will check for understanding at the end of the session. Let's do a little of the pros and cons. So one of the pros, and everybody agrees with this, is that it has excellent performance in terms of load times. To avoid that blank screen with things just rendering, waiting for the server to bring everything. And that makes a huge decision when you are working in a big project. It's the reason that Facebook basically create this framework. They're dealing with hundreds billions of data, and they needed better load times, and they made it basically. It has a better developer experience because it has a bunch of built-ins, like the routers, that is only now because you create a folder with a page. There is a couple of built-in components now itself. We saw Link last session, but I will show you in this one a couple more that give you a bunch of functionality only with things that are built in. It is super scalable and easy to deploy. I will show you in the last session how to deploy this thing, and you cannot believe how easy it is now to deploy. And it's the whole idea behind Vercel. Like, they start as a company to be like the competency of Heroku and making the deploy super easy. And they made it too. Like, they did it. It has a huge ecosystem of libraries, not only on the React part, which is huge, but a bunch of libraries and plugins for Tailwind will give you a bunch of functionality just with an import, which is nice. And it's great for SEO, which is the business part of this idea. In the cons, you have a learning curve. It has faced a wall of misconceptions there in the industry, and a bunch of people is still super afraid of this idea of having code in the server, which is a little ironic too, because for those of you that work with PHP, it's basically that. So it's not so new in the industry, but people, for some reason, separate React to be only in the front end. And now that it works as a framework that works in the server part, is confusing people. And then it's super opinionated, but it gives you all the freedom and all the autonomy. So it doesn't give you too much of errors. It really allows you to do anything. It, it's only that it has now best practice, but even it's just recommendations. You can do pretty much whatever you wanted. And of course, that is in the industry frowned upon because then you have to have the responsibility on your team of building the things correctly. If I had some backlash there. Let's talk about the break practices on the client components. And I told you this a little on last season, but I want to bring it this one because it's super important. It's basically the only rule that they ask you to follow. Is that the client component should be live in your tree decision of your components. For example, here in this diagram, the button is the client component, and it will be inside the hero. So the hero will be a server component and is the parent of the button. We have this same architecture or logic of parent component, children component, and civilians. We didn't lose anything of that with this framework. And it's basically the same rule, but same different is that don't import server components inside client components. So don't do this. Don't have a client component that is the parent of a server component. And the way that you avoid to do this is that you change the order. So the parent component is the server component, and the client component is the children component. And then your client component is a leaf also. This is best practices, and they ask you that don't do this, but the framework itself don't throw you an error if you do this. Like it doesn't tell you anything. So it's up to you to check that you are not doing this because the framework itself will allow you. It's just that this could create a bunch of errors on the bring data, because this form component, in theory, every time that render something different from the form, will render again this section, and that is bringing data that you don't need to bring when you're rendering, which it could make your app, your load time different, which is the whole idea of Next.Js. But in truth, nothing in the framework itself will throw you an error if you do this. And that's the thing that doesn't, like, manager engineer doesn't like, that it doesn't tell you that is an error, because then you can do it. Like if you don't check your team, this could happen. And it's actually very easy to get to this point, especially in bigger projects. And then in best practice, like one of the common questions and from everyone that is learning Next.js is how identify when you need to use a client component. And one of the rules, very simple, is if you need to use event handlers, like on click, on change, and submit, then it's a client component. That is like a straightforward rule of thumbs. Because the data is now not the thing that is true, because you can fetch data from server components and from client components. You don't lose the ability. So pretty much they tell you that if you need to control the data, like with user state, is probably a client component. But if you are fetching data only, it could be a server or a client, and it's up to you because the UI that you are building decided where you want to fetch your data. And we will see this in this session on working with forms and bringing data, the difference of working with data using a state or just fetching data to present to the client. Where are the two different decisions that you need to do with data? Okay, so let's see the code. This is the code that we have from last session. I didn't do anything with the code. Like honestly, it was open here all week. So let me first run npm run dev. Will run the server. Wait, it's not here. npm run dev. And then it will bring everything in localhost 3000. So let me open that one so you will see it. But this a little, and then this is the code that we have. Well, I changed a little the navbar, so it's now a navbar actually with some, so I will show you what I did with the navbar. I put some styles in the class of the links, which are basically a p tag. It's the only thing that I have done. So you will see we have the agenda because we have this folder agenda with a page that is just a component that says there will be an agenda. And you see that here we have the speakers, which is basically the same. We have a folder speakers here that create a page component. We have the contact. We were working on this one, and it's the first thing that I want to do. Fix this form and make it work. And then I create this link that it give you is one of the built-ins that Next.Js will give you. You have a 404 page for free. I didn't create this, but if the framework doesn't find the router, it gives you automatically a 404 page, which is very decent. So let's fix this for Adora that wasn't here the last session. Routers now in Next.js are super straightforward. Inside your source, you will find an app folder. Everything that you create inside the app have the possibility of being a router. How you do that? Inside your app, you create a folder with the name of your router, because I want to do the code of conduct. I will do code. And then once inside that folder, you have to create a file. And this is the only rule that Next.js has. The name of the file has to be page. And I personally put the extension JXX, so I will remember that this page is actually a router. And then you create here your component. I encourage you to call this component whatever is that you are making. And as soon as you do this, you are in fact creating a router. And now your code doesn't give you a 404, it gives you the router code because you created the folder code and the page, of course. The page is mandatory. So we fixed that. Let's work on the form. There is a bunch of stuff that I want to tell you about the form. One, just so we recap the things that we did. As soon as I create a form, let's create this with the, what I want to do is create a subscription form. So I will put this called email. For now, let's don't do an email, an ID. Like as soon as I do this, let me put some styles here. How you do styles here is that everything is a class. So I want to do the bottom margin. So it's margin bottom. And let's do a big one. No, it's actually the top because it's getting on the top with the header, with the number. So margin top. And let's put a big one. Let's put 10. Let's create a max for a max width. Let's do max and width. And let's say, I think medium, exactly. And then let's do padding for all of that. And let's do padding of 6. And I will say that is a block, because I want that all the input and button work as a. And that in contact, we'll put it here a little of. So I will move this. Let's create a label because we need a label for all that. So label. And I will put the input inside the label. And for the label, let's create a span with email, say email. And I can put classes on every component, every HTML tag. So I can say text white here because my background is black. And let's also say that this is a block. And you see how I see. Now, at this point you can say, but I don't want to memorize all the things that you need to do for a form. And you will be correctly. And that is where the huge ecosystem of plugins will help you because, and I put this in the chat so you have access to this one. And also something that I forgot to tell you, sorry about that, is that everything is in the same. Like if you go to my GitHub, I'm following this repository, conference landing. I'll put the link in the chat too. And the slides are here. The slides for the second, and you will see all the recap for the first session also here. But basically all the code and things that we're doing are here. Sorry, I forgot to mention that at the end. And you will find also this link there, but if you want it, the thing is that Tailwind have a special plugins for working with forms that will do a bunch of built-in styles. So I actually want to use this one because I don't want to memorize all the things. So you have to do two things. You have to install the thing. I don't want to install in all the package. So if you go to a terminal where we are working on this project and you do npm install that plugin, you just need to install it and that's it. And the second thing that you need to do is add this line in the plugin session in your Tailwind configured file. So you need to go to your code and you will go to the Tailwind configured file and you will see the plugin array. So you just need to add the required Tailwind sessions. And if you see, as soon as we do that, it gives you a bunch of like this blue thing for the form. It gives you a bunch of functionality built in. I will wait 2 seconds if you're following my code in case that you want to do this one, or you can just watch the recorder later and we'll see what we did to bring this. Um, okay, so let's end the form. As I have the input, and let's create a class for the bottom. So we will see something cool. I will say that have to be the full of the block. Let's give you a height of 10. Let's say that is rounded. Let's do it a background color. So I will do orange because that's the whole color of my brand. Let's do a padding in the left and right. Let's do, say that it has to have a shadow. And let's do a hover because I want that with hover, change the color to blue, which is something that I like very much, pretty much. It's the only reason. So when I do this, it automatically gives me the hover. Let's do a class to the input too, only because I want that it has the full and let's do a margin bottom here. That's it. It looks nice now. But as soon as I want that this form works, you will remember this because we have a type here. The button is type submit, not type. Then I have to put the onSubmit in the form. So as soon as I do onSubmit here, and let's say that I will have a function here that's called handle submit. And then because I say that I will have a form here that says handle submit, let's create this function. So it's handle submit, which is an anonymous function. But because it's handling the submit, it's have access to the event here. And as soon as I do this, it will throw me an error. Because if you need interactivity, this is a client component. It gives you that error. So we saw the last session, you fixed this error with use client here. That line of code fixed your error and allowed you to work with the form. And you will remember that this is not the way that you handle forms on React. And you don't, like we haven't changed anything of that. So how you handle is that you have the name. You don't have a name, you have a value. And value is actually, let's call this email, but this email will come from the state. So you need to import state. And create an state. That in the initial point will be empty and my state will be email and the function will be set email. And then that value is email, and when on change, what I want to do is pass a function with the event that will change what we'll call set email with the event that target value. This is not something new from Next.Js. This is just how you handle controlled inputs on forms. And then here in the handle submit, the first thing that you need to do, of course, is prevent the default. But then you can do, because I haven't bring the, let's do an alert. This is the part where you put this email in your database, but we will do that in our last session. So for now, let's do that in an alert. And that will bring you the email. And if you want to close it, like clean the form, you set the email to empty again. Once you have that, I can put here, and I need to fix this, but it's a styles error. So basically, inside the input, I need to see the text. So let's do the text black. And now if I refresh this, and I will see what I'm typing. And the alert is working. So this is how you handle information. And I show you that one of the things that is very clear is that if you have to have a interactivity function like on submit, then it's a client component, and you should use client at the top of that questions so far. Something that it wasn't clear of how you handle the form. We can put here a placeholder in the input. Let's create the placeholder. And then you will see this placeholder. You can give, let's do a margin back. Looks good enough for me. And this is how you handle forms on Next.js. You will see nothing way too different from how you handle forms on React. The only thing is that it's give you an error if you try to use handle or even use a state without being a client. Now, check that in my I doing everything this in form, but I'm bringing form in the contact page. And this is a server component. And why I'm doing this way? Because I'm respecting this one. So I have a component here that is contact, that has the form, which is the client component. So the client component will be always my leaf inside the server component, not the other way around. Is that clear?
That's clear for me.
Okay, cool. Okay, let's do something more interesting now. Let's bring data from the internet. So I have, this is not yes. I have a speaker. I create a speaker and I have a list of speakers, but I don't want to invent that data because it's a huge amount of data. And there is a bunch of useful tools in the internet for when you need to fake data. One of my favorites is this JSON placeholder with users. Basically, it's a JSON placeholder that gives you fake information from pretty much whatever you need. And one of the resources that you have is that it gives you fake users. So I will use this one to fake the speakers of my conference. So basically, I will bring data from this thing. Now, let's make a decision there. What I want to do with this data. Well, I just wanted to present to the user. Like the user will not do anything with that data. They cannot modify that. They cannot delete the speaker. They cannot do anything. So because I making that decision, that logic decision, I know that I will bring data in a server component because the user will only see it. They don't will interact. So the first thing that I want to do is go to the speaker. It will be here. Now, when I bring this, well, let's do it here because this is a server component. So let me bring this. It's as simple as create an async await function. So let's do it. Let's create an async function that let's call get data. And that function will make the request, the await request. So let's call this const request. That is the await. And let's do fetch because we can now. Now what I want to fetch is this URL. So let's do this. And that's it. Whatever came from here, I want to return as request.json. That's it. That's how you get data from the internet now. Now I want to see that I actually bring this correctly. So let's create another function. It has to be also an async await function because I'm dealing with JSON here. Let's call this function show user, and is a function that will bring that data. So I will await get data. And I want to return it. So what I want to do with the return is let's do a div. And let's do data.map user. And for each one of the users, for now, because I just want to see that I'm bringing correctly the data, let's do let's do a div also. And inside the div, let's do a p tag that will bring user.name. Is user.name? Yeah, it's user.name. And I have an ID for each one of them. So I will use this ID because one of the things that changed for React with Next.Js is that when you are doing a map, now it's mandatory that you have a key. Otherwise, now it will give you an error, not just a warning. You remember that before that it was just a warning that, hey, you're missing a key. Now it's an error. And then let's put this here. So this is basically a component. So I will follow the rules for a component. So what I'm doing here is that I will create this a main section. This is just for styles. It's not, it could be a div, but I will bring my component here. And because I'm inside the speaker, I should be, yeah, because I put the username outside the curly brace. I see all the information. And it's super cool because I can do all the async functions that I wanted inside of what it is, a server component. And it is more cool if you check the network. So it has, in the past, you were seeing how when you were doing a fetch or everything, you will bring in here on the network and you will see the connections with the server, and you will see, but because this is a server component, it doesn't bring the HTML, like it doesn't delay it in the second call of, hey, this is an HTML. Let's wait for the JavaScript and do then the GET request. It's automatically doing the GET request to the speakers. And it is super cool to see it. That is so fast. Questions? Okay, so now let's imagine that you don't want to deal, just imagine for a minute that you don't want to deal with tailwind for this page. For some reason, you want to manage the styles and the CSS of this page independently. You have two ways of doing that. You can work on the global CSS. Here in the file global CSS, you will have all your CSS variables that affect the whole app. And you can have here, like if you call this, where is this page? I don't know, if you put here an ID and call this speakers, you can come here to the global CSS and create a rule for the speakers. So for IDs are then you can create whatever you want to do. Let's do padding of 6 pixels. Oh, let's do padding of monumental. and you see. So that's one way of dealing with CSS. If you don't want to use Tailwind because you don't feel confident, you can do this. You can always edit the global CSS, and it will recognize whatever you wanted. There is another way of working with this one, and is that you create their own module for the CSS. So how that works is that inside your folders, inside the speakers, you create page module.css. And then that page module, here you can create the same. You don't even need an ID. You can create a here. I change the color of the to, but then you have to import this module here. And how you do that is that you import styles from, and you import the module that you are. And I have a p tag, right? Yeah, I have a p tag. So now the text will be, why are you complaining? Yeah. How you put the tag here, that's something I forget, is that you, in the class name, you say styles.p. And I think this will paste. Nope. Okay, so let's call this an ID in this one. There it is. And it's not calling the status. Let's see. Use it here on the ID speakers. I change the background. Let's do, and then the color has to be black. Or red. This one. So how you can do this is last name, the styles that there is. And that way you can control the styles of whatever you want control independently of the rest of your app. So the styles of the speakers will be independent of the rest of the app because you create the module CSS page for that specific folder. Now you can do those things. And again, Next.js don't throw you an error if you use those kind of, like I can have a module CSS and then working at the same moment with classes here. Like this p tag could have a class, and let's do, I don't know, from Tailwind itself. Let's do padding. Let's put a padding of 6 on each one of the names. That's it. And you see Next.js doesn't throw you an error, doesn't tell you that you cannot mix and match how you handle the styles on CSS. But another of those best practices is that you don't do this. Like if you don't want to work with Tailwind because you don't feel confident of Tailwind, then work with your models that way, or work on your global CSS, but don't mix and match. Like on this of working half of your styles on Tailwind and half of your styles on your own CSS model. Um, but again, that responsibility is in your field now. The framework itself doesn't prevent you from doing that. Questions, doubts, or something that is not clear for the speakers?
I have no questions. Just it's so interesting how much autonomy that Next.js gives you when it comes to each step of the way. It's like, wow.
Yeah, exactly. It gives you now all the autonomy. It's super opinionated. Like it gives you a way of doing things in the Next.js way, but at the same time, it gives you completely autonomy of the whatever you want to do, pretty much you can do it. Um, and now that's the reason a lot of people consider this cont is because they with so much liberty, you have so much responsibility, you know, you
Literally, I'm like, I can see how it'd be tempting to want to mix for the
exactly.
CSS because it's like, okay, well, Tailwind is doing some pretty cool things, but I'd rather handle this a different way. But then it could
And
get
then you
tracked
have
very
your
fast.
model, and then you have your tailwind, and the framework will deal with that. Like it doesn't tell you no. It's just best practice that you don't mix and match how you handle the styles. So it's basically you take a decision, like you want to work with Tailwind, okay, so stick to Tailwind. You want to work with your CSS styles because you don't want to memorize the classes of Tailwind, or work with your CSS styles in your models, but
Don't mix and match.
don't mix and match. Um, No, I just because we are working here, I want to change this. So it's not just p tag, it's actually component itself. So in my folder component, I will create a new component that I will call card. And again, this is a personal preference. When I'm working on components, my components you will see is just .js. I don't use .jsx on my components, but this is a personal preference. It's just to remember that these components are not routers, basically. But you could call this JSXX if you wanted. The framework, it doesn't, again, doesn't throw you an error. And let's do this car a little more interest. So let's create the component. I know that I want to bring the name. Let's bring the name, the email, and pretty much on the company. Yeah, so I know that this thing will bring name, email, and company. Let's play with the div. I will have a div, and then I want to have like a visual card. So I have a div here for one of the cool components that are built in JX now. That is the image component. For the image component, you have to import it, but it's built in so you don't have to install anything Next. You will see that is from Next itself. And then let's do, this is the div of the image. Let's do another div for all the information. So history tag for the name. And p tags for company and another p tag for email. And let's do the styles here. Last name. Let's do this because I want to simulate a card. So let's do this, the background white. I will say that it's rounded. And it's rounded large. Let's do a shadow and a shadow large too. And I will hit the overflow. This div, let's do the class name. Let's do the width full. Let's put a height. Let's do 56. Okay. Let's do flex and justify center because I center the image. Item center too. And let's do a little background shadow. So let's do background 10. Now image is a built-in component, but it comes with a couple of rules. One is that you need a source. It's mandatory. Another thing that is mandatory here is the width. Let's do 550. Let's do height, 550. Another thing mandatory in this case now, or it throws you an error, is the alt text, but you can always use the name as the alt. And let's do a class name because I want to have it rounded. On the full to a width and an edge that it covers the object. Now, what you can do with source, which is the problem that we face here. Well, you always can bring things for the internet. And if you check my GitHub, the one that we are following for the whole information, you will see that I bring, so the only rule for is that image has to be on this public folder, and I put it one here, and I want to use it again. So I download this one, and I just bring that image. So I will bring that to my public folder. It's in source. No, it's outside source actually. It's in the one level outside source. And I bring this T. And now, because it's in public, now I can see it here, I can access directly. So I don't need curly braces. I can say, it's called avatar. And that will bring the theme. And this is a regular component. How you can a regular component? Well, you call it where you want use it. So let's import card. And here instead of all this div, let's bring card. Now I will throw you an error because you are not using a key, but we know that we can use the ID. And I know that I need to pass name, email, or company. So let's do that. Name, insert that name, email, insert that email, and company, insert that. And that will give me where is sending object. Is that company is an object. This company that name. And that's it. I have the cards with the image. Um, I want to see this in a grid. So let's do this. Let's forget about the model and let's change this div to be a class in Darwin. Let's do a grid. Grid colors 1. And with a gap. A big gap. Let's do 6. Hmm. Save if the screen is medium, let's do grid columns 2. Grid. And if the screen is large, let's do grid colors 3. That's it. That works pretty much. And then the only thing that we still need to do is fix these tips because we don't have a styles for the name or these ones. But I will copy paste these things. So I think super cool. Questions so far?
No questions.
Cool. I think this is a great place to stop this session. Let me see in the, oh yeah. So we work with forms and how to use clients because if you have an event handle, you are in a client component. I show you how to fetch data from a server component. Show you how to work with CSS models if you don't want to work with Tailwind. And the user state and data, you don't lose that on Next.js. You just know that if you are handling data with use state is a client component. You will see that here in the speakers component in the page, we are not using use data at all because we don't need it. Because I took the decision that the user will not do anything with the data. And because I'm not using use state, this could be a server component. I don't lose that. Is that clear? Yeah, perfect. So let's work on this thing that I'm doing, which is the checking of understanding of the things that we saw on this session. Move a little. Let's do this a little more interactive. Who wants to tell me something that we learned today in this session? That was cool to learn.
Regarding the CSS, we talked about the use of the module CSS and how Next.js doesn't actually complain. So we have to be aware of what we're doing, and we should avoid mixing different types of styles. So if we're going to write our own CSS, do that rather than mixing two different things.
Exactly. So it's basically a best practice. It tells you, please don't mix how you handle your styles, but the framework itself doesn't prevent you for doing like at any moment tell you an error if you create your own model and then deal with Halloween. She's cool at some level. But you can understand like imagine working with Next.js in your final project on Tectonica and having so much liberty of doing whatever you wanted, like mixing and matching all the styles. In another multiverse, probably you could have that liberty. Cool. Thank you so much, Naomi. Who wants to go next?
I can go.
Yeah.
I guess also we need to pay attention to the hierarchy that we give to files because it's not going to give us a warning if we don't follow the order.
Exactly. Exactly. Basically, you can have a client component being a parent of a server. Like the framework itself again doesn't throw you an error, but it's not a best practice because then you are loading the server component every time that the client component change, and that is the whole point of having server components.
For this, I will imagine maybe creating like some type like a flow chart or something like that to follow all these items. Would that help us? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I'm working on a freelance contract with it's a huge dashboard for a couple of lawyers. And it's so huge, you have no idea, that I have to create a whole, like a storyboard of the framework because I want to be aware that I don't want to have a client component being the parent of a server component. But the project itself is so huge that I needed to create the whole architecture like in a whiteboarding thing that tells me outside the code itself what I'm doing with that detector. But that project is huge. It has, I don't know how many.
yeah, I will imagine like if you're joining a team and in a company, this would be a good way to like contribute to the team if you create that flow.
Exactly.
Like, you
Yeah.
did good in the documentation, right?
Yeah, totally. It will be an also tool for the rest of the team that they know what component is the parent of the other, like a map of the site that tells you who is the parent of what, and if it's a server component or a client component.
Sorry, it may be really a good like opportunity to find errors or ways to improve the app.
Yeah, totally. Again, because the framework itself allows you to do that. So it's not that they are seeing an error over there. It's just a best practice.
Yeah. No, thank you.
You're welcome. Tara, you want to go next?
I thought the part on the when you were setting up the form at the beginning of the session and just kind of relearning how to handle the submit button and the
Yeah.
functions with that.
Yeah. You don't lose anything of the React ecosystem. So all that value and on-change and handle submit and everything there is still there. That part didn't change. Adora, you want to go next? Final?
Yes, the two biggest things I guess I learned were kind of mentioned before, but also to further expand on that, the concept of I guess the client being a parent versus the child of server components, and then also the concept of leaves, so things within it, I guess phrased in that manner was new for me during this session as well,
Yeah.
mixed with the autonomy of Next.js and it letting you low-key be as adventurous as you wish
Yes.
in its framework.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
It's super cool that you have so much liberty to do pretty much whatever you wanted, but
yeah.
then and you have to be aware of the things that you are doing.
Yeah, I think for me that would kind of make Next.js a little intimidating because sometimes when learning something new, it is a bit easier to have a few more restrictions or boundaries outlined, but also immediately opens it up to the fun of just kind of figuring it out, seeing what happens, why they would want to implement, well, why they would suggest such a boundary, but not strictly adhere to it, to also further my understanding with things as I'm going along. So yeah, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I totally see how when you are learning a new framework as React, probably will be feeling more confident if you have a set strict of rules and you need to follow those rules. But at the same time, it gives you built in so much information without the needs of hooks and things like that, that it could be also reduce the learning curve, I will say.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I think it's a good place to stop for this session. Thank you so much for joining me in this course. I'm super excited. I'll show you why I'm super excited about Next.js and why I'm working with Next.js in all my projects now. And next section, we will work with something that they also simplifies in ways that are awesome to see, that is Auth0, because it's now super straightforward and they reduce the learning curve of that. So it's not anymore a pain point for developers. And I want to show them that. That will be our next session. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for your time and for doing this. This has been lovely.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Christina.
Enjoy the
Bye.
rest of your
Bye,
Saturday.
everyone.
Bye.